noted, Heidi, it is happening right now. It is happening in Ukraine. It is happening in Haiti. And we're talking about organized, systemic use of rape as a tool of sexual violence, as a tool of war. And the rapes that happen on women on October 7th were a war against their body. And 96% of rape survivors will suffer post-traumatic stress disorder within the first 2 weeks. 51% will have lifelong post-traumatic stress disorder. So we actually do understand that the trauma that happens with rape. We understand it because we understand PTSD of veterans coming back from war. We understand the flashbacks, the sleeplessness. You're going to have issues sleeping tonight because of your tertiary trauma from bearing witness to this, right? Many of you are. We're talking about depression. We know that rates of depression for trauma for those who've experienced rape and sexual assault are 3 times what they are for folks who have not. We know that suicidal ideation and death by suicide is over 2 times more common for rape survivors. And so what is happening with these families right now is the survivor's identity has been shaken, the family's identity has been shaken, their community's identity has been shaken, mostly because of a myth that drives victim blaming. And that myth is, and this is why we, even though we know better, many of us do not believe survivors or want to blame them or hold them somehow accountable. What was she wearing? What was she doing? What was she, why was she out at night? We tell this story because to tell the truth, which is that we don't control these acts of criminal violence, right? And that the survivor is not at all responsible for a criminal, felonious act against her. If we tell that truth, then it means we can't control it. It means that our daughters are on college campuses where they face higher rates of rape and sexual assault than if they don't go to college. It means that we are not in control of this, and so what ends up happening is that a lot of survivors face victim blaming. I hope that none of these survivors do, but I will tell you right now, the struggle is literally to keep these rape survivors alive. The suicidal ideation and what happens for the next couple of years, it will take all of the family's resources to focus on that survivor. It will take community resources to focus on her. And what happens, and I want to just tie this back into so much of what's been said on the panel, if I may, what happens is that all of these symptoms of trauma are exacerbated when you face something that Jennifer Fried has called institutional betrayal. Meaning that the institutions that are supposed to support you and protect you, whether it's your political institutions or a college campus, when you come forward to report rape or sexual violence, or law enforcement. And I should just say, we live in a culture that normalizes this. 90%, the UN does a survey every year, 90% of people across the globe view women as less than men, subhuman. It is patriarchy, it is misogyny, right? And it means, the hatred of women means that we all, a percentage is actually 91%, it means we all hold that, right? Like, it's men and women alike who are holding up this idea that women are subhuman, which is driving this, right? What happened on October 7th was intersectional. It was the hatred of women, and it was the hatred of Jews. There's no way you could do that to a human body unless you first dehumanize that human body, and so that is what was happening there. And all of these symptoms are amplified when a survivor faces institutional betrayal, meaning the institutions that are supposed to support her do not. And what happened on that day is that the international feminist community and the local, the US feminist community absolutely failed survivors with their silence. And they failed survivors because we have something that has happened on what I call the illiberal left, which is the oppression Olympics, where the pain and suffering of certain identities matters more than the pain and suffering of others. And I can say this as a college professor. I care deeply about the pain and suffering of people of color. I also care deeply, as hopefully every decent human being in this audience cares about the pain and suffering of women and queer folks and people who face fat phobia and people who face anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We can hold these complexities, right? But what has unfortunately happened is, and we all know this, we don't say this out loud, we all know this, because we have defined this in racial terms in the hierarchy of what matters in the US left and even in the global left, we are not talking about this because we have ranked certain pain and suffering higher. And I will say it is intellectually dishonest to, let's just go through a quick list. It's intellectually dishonest to act like this started on October 7th when there's a 2,000-year history of Jewish persecution. It is intellectually dishonest to classify Jewish people as settler colonialists or as white. It is simply to take a relatively recent phenomenon of the racial hierarchies in the United States that emerged about 400 years ago, and to take that and to put it on what is happening right now, to understand what is happening in the middle. It is simply intellectually dishonest. It is intellectually dishonest to say that you care about the pain and suffering of people and not speak up about what happened on October 7th. It's also intellectually dishonest to not be as equally heartbroken for the children who are dying in Gaza when Hamas, and not being able to separate the people, right, from Hamas, the terrorist organization. It is intellectually dishonest to not have your heart break for those children, just the way my heart breaks for the women of October 7th. And I hope that we can all embrace some intellectual honesty.
Yes, thank you. I think empathy is so important. And again, it's the antidote to intolerance. So, Soraya, you know, one of the things that we've witnessed is obviously anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, but this attitude of treating women as subhuman. My question to you, with all this violence, on the treatment of women as weapons of war, the anti-Semitism and the Islamophobia, what do you think, how do you think this impacts democracy and the world?
Thank you, Daphna. I sat there as I watched the movie with mixed feelings. I was in deep grief, deep anger, and in deep disappointment. Why? Because for 75 years, the lobby of Hamas and the extremists have taken us all for a ride, and we didn't speak up long and hard and strong. And today, the silence of the Muslim communities, not around the US, let's talk about Los Angeles, is deafening, isn't it? Yes. So I was embarrassed. But I remember the words of my father, who would always tell me that we, as a human race, we are either coming from a problem, or we are in a problem, or we are going towards a problem. So let us take heart, and it's so exciting really for me to see every one of us, every one of you here, because those of us who have community, we cannot be victims. And to remember that we have work to do. In that, the question I want all of us to ask is, are we going to go through this, or are we going to grow through